They thought they'd buried the truth, but didn't realize it was a seed. Now that it's rising through the cracks, nothing can contain what's about to unfold. The force that once tried to suppress you is now the very reason you're being elevated. The same hands that tried to cage your presence are trembling under the weight of what they unleashed. They mistook silence for weakness, retreat for defeat, but all along, something ancient in you was calculating, calibrating, and preparing to shift everything they built. They aren't furious because you failed. They're terrified because you didn't, and now the mirror of reality is showing them everything they tried to escape. Not with drama, not with revenge, but with divine symmetry that humbles even the proudest illusions. They never targeted who you were. They targeted what you carried. The way you walked into rooms and made falsehoods feel nervous. The way your spirit refused to mold itself into roles that dulled its brilliance. That's what made you dangerous. Not loud rebellion, but quiet accuracy. And the more they tried to convince you you were wrong, the more your truth began to interfere with their script. This was never about fitting in. It was about shaking foundations without ever raising your voice. You became a threat by existing, and that alone was enough to wake their deepest fears. Because what you reveal by being real, they have to hide by pretending. There are moments in life when the storm should have swallowed you whole, but somehow the winds kept folding around you instead. What looked like luck to outsiders was actually something ancient standing between you and destruction. A force that doesn't speak in thunder or flash in lightning, but watches, waits, and blocks every unseen strike aimed at your soul. Not every hit was avoided, but none of them reached your core. They misjudged your openness as a gap in your defense, not realizing you were never exposed, only positioned. Every blow they sent bounced back harder, not because of retaliation, but because they underestimated the hands holding your timeline. Protection this deep doesn't come from hope or ritual. It's woven into your very existence, like a code imprinted on your being before breath ever touched your lungs. The field around you doesn't just deflect harm, it reflects identity. Those who attempt to dismantle you unknowingly initiate their own collapse, not from vengeance, but from the imbalance they triggered. It's not philosophy. It's a reality encrypted into the framework of your purpose. And that energy, it's not borrowed, it's yours. You were never a fragile flame in the wind. You were the current beneath the fire, untouchable, unshakable, and not here by chance. There's a reason the puzzle never made sense from the outside, because it wasn't meant to. What looked like chance was never randomness. Every narrowly avoided fall, every door that opened right before impact, every person that disappeared just before they could derail you, none of it was accidental. The timing wasn't luck. It was coded. A hidden choreography running behind the curtain of your life, rearranging events with surgical precision. What some called coincidence was actually intervention, subtle but absolute. Behind the scenes, the path you were on was protected like a classified blueprint. And every sabotage attempt was logged, traced, and reversed before it could fracture your alignment. The real battle was never personal. It wasn't you, they were after what breathes through you. The disruption you carry by simply existing. You threatened not their egos, but the architecture of their control. They didn't just push lies about you. They sculpted illusions, intentionally shaping stories that bent the light around you to hide your shape. And they didn't act alone. There was a chain reaction, a deliberate convergence of motives, each reinforcing the next to create a web strong enough to confuse even your closest circle. They knew if they could isolate you from resonance, they could slow down the timeline that was destined to accelerate others through your rise. No attack was ever standalone. Their moves were timed to confuse, not confront. While you were healing in one space, pressure was applied in another. While you regained peace mentally, they twisted your emotional field. While your hands built, shadows tugged at your soul. It was never about winning. It was about draining, stretching your spirit thin across too many fronts. But what they didn't factor in was your pattern recognition. That quiet voice that whispered, "Something's off." The one you almost ignored, but didn't. That's not fear. That's internal radar, built not from paranoia, but from divine memory encoded in your being. A signal, a warning, and a promise. The silence wasn't just quiet, it was strategic. The moment things got heavy, the ones who once swore loyalty began to vanish like smoke. What looked like rejection on the surface was actually a coordinated withdrawal, not by accident, but by influence. Subtle manipulation crept into the hearts of those around you, distorting their thoughts, twisting their trust, and slowly pushing you to the outer edge of your own story. What you faced wasn't just people turning cold. It was a carefully engineered isolation, designed to fracture your confidence and blur your vision by leaving you surrounded by echoes instead of allies. That hollow space wasn't a void. It was an incubator. What appeared to be abandonment was actually sacred concealment, a hidden passage where distractions were stripped and clarity began its quiet construction. The withdrawal of noise gave birth to a voice you hadn't fully heard before, your own. And while others called it misfortune, something deeper knew it was preparation. In that stretch of solitude, where comfort was replaced with tension and silence grew sharp, a new blueprint was carved into you, one that can't be shaken by opinion or undone by betrayal. This wasn't heartbreak. It was excavation. Piece by piece, the false dependencies were removed, forcing a recalibration of your inner compass. Every person who failed to hold their position revealed the one truth you were meant to carry alone. Not because you weren't lovable, but because you were unrepeatable. They targeted your circle first, hoping that breaking the net would cause the core to collapse. But it didn't. And when the moment came to either compromise or keep standing, you chose to stand. No explanations. No pleas. No performance. Just presence. That decision sealed something in you that can't be faked, borrowed, or taught. It has to be survived. And you did. There's a reason your essence started unlocking the moment things got chaotic. The pressure didn't paralyze you, it decoded you. Every time they pushed, something rare inside you began to pulse harder, waking up pieces of your soul that had never been accessed before. What they thought would crush you actually cracked open sealed doors. And behind those doors, abilities so precise, so aligned, they could only be activated by friction. Comfort might have kept you steady, but it never would have made you limitless. What you carry now isn't just strength, it's refined instinct sharpened by resistance. You didn't just survive what was meant to end you, you turned it into a launch signal. What emerged wasn't just clarity, it was a signal tower. A stream of pure intelligence now flows through channels they can't decode or disrupt. The more they tried to distort your identity, the more your vision cleared. You began to hear without sound, feel without touch, and know without needing explanation. They underestimated what would happen when you stopped seeking answers outside and started listening inward. Their interference didn't slow your growth, it lit the fuse. And in trying to interrupt your evolution, they became the reason it accelerated. What was meant to break your rhythm instead synchronized you with something they'll never be able to track, block, or understand. The intensity that tried to silence you only tuned you into a different channel of reality. While they thought they were breaking you, they were unintentionally helping you bypass levels of growth that others spend entire lifetimes chasing. The tension they created triggered something encoded in your design, a kind of hidden mechanism that only activates under extreme pressure. Now, you move in a rhythm they can't feel, and process information through a lens that renders their old tactics useless. The rules they live by no longer apply to you. You've left the map they operate on, and they know it. There's a kind of elevation that can't be taught, only earned through internal collapse and resurrection. That's where you now stand, on the other side of what was meant to consume you. But the shift wasn't just personal. It rewired the field around you. You're now in sync with systems of creation that respond not to effort, but to resonance. Outcomes begin bending around your presence, not because you're forcing them, but because you've aligned with the original language of manifestation. What once required struggle now responds to frequency. And your frequency? It's no longer one they can hear. Retribution didn't arrive with sound and spectacle. It slipped in through their routines and unraveled the ground they walked on. One by one, the outcomes they engineered to sabotage your progress began turning back on them, not out of vengeance but out of balance. The justice now unfolding is not an event, it's a recalibration. Their carefully hidden moves are surfacing at the exact pace needed for full exposure. They feel it in the slow erosion of the masks they used to hide behind, as the consequences they plan for you quietly rebuild themselves into their own collapse. The unraveling reaches beyond what they planned. It touches areas they never imagined were connected. The misfortunes appearing in their lives are not random, they're rhythmic. Each missed opportunity, each fractured relationship, each sleepless night isn't just bad timing. It's the echo of what they sent out bouncing back, perfectly matched in tone and intensity. But what keeps them up at night isn't just the loss. It's the eerie familiarity of it all. The experiences they hoped you'd drown in are now showing up in their own mirrors, and there's no way to pretend it's coincidence anymore. This realignment didn't come from intervention. It came from inevitability. The laws governing this outcome don't need signatures, systems, or trials. They are embedded into the architecture of existence. Every choice made against you became a trigger for correction. And now that correction is fully in motion. No one is behind the curtain pulling strings. It's the strings themselves tying back into order, responding to your return to alignment. And while their world unravels, yours recalibrates, cleaner, sharper, and impossibly untouchable. Not because you fought harder, but because you evolved faster. Some faces wore wisdom like a borrowed coat, impressive from a distance but never stitched to fit the truth. What once passed as helpful neutrality now lies in fragments. Those who posed as guides, subtly tilting conversations, stirring doubt under the banner of care, are now stepping into the light they never expected to reveal them. Their influence wasn't built on honesty but on veiled manipulation, threading dissonance into your most sacred spaces. Their actions no longer hide behind titles or intentions. They are being seen, not just by the eyes around them, but by the energy itself, which no longer permits their illusion to remain intact. The illusion of advancement collapses fast when it's built on borrowed light. Those who disguised harm with holy language now find themselves sinking into spiritual stillness, cut off not by punishment, but by the natural laws they violated. The insight they once paraded as divine wisdom now slips through their grasp like ash. Their frequency doesn't just fall, it disconnects. And as their words grow heavy with emptiness, the world begins to notice. The roles they crafted to influence others now unravel in front of the very audiences they tried to control. What once seemed like grace now reveals the echo of something hollow. Their undoing is loud, even when no one speaks of it directly. Their aura tells the story their mouth can't edit. The deception they directed outward now reflects on their own posture, their timing, the subtle hesitation in every interaction. And the same people they tried to deceive now pick up on the shift without needing an explanation. It's not revenge, it's resonance. Their own energy has become the proof. The fabric of their reputation stretches thin, revealing seams where things were stitched together in secrecy. And now, the world starts to see what you felt all along. Those who manipulated from the background never expected the light to rotate. They believed obscurity was immunity, that playing puppeteer guaranteed escape. But the thread has looped back, and the hand behind the curtain is no longer hidden. The force they used to engineer conflict is now pushing them forward, into exposure. Not through scandal, but through clarity. The clarity that makes quiet betrayals feel loud. That makes silent sabotage unmistakable. The same force they tried to dim in you now beams directly onto them, casting shadows only where there was once misdirection. The spiral of events they triggered has returned, subtle but irreversible. The same tension they curated now settles into their own environments. The unease they planned for you now shapes their mornings, their choices, their outcomes. And it's not punishment. It's reflection. An ancient code of balance playing itself out through timelines that can't be gamed or bribed. What they called bad luck is the return address on what they sent out. And as their world bends beneath the weight of consequence, you rise, not by pushing back, but by refusing to collapse. That alone changed the frequency. That alone revealed the truth. Some people only see what's in front of them. Others are born seeing what hasn't happened yet. You stood in that space between what was and what was coming, pointing to signs no one else could read, until the script flipped. Now the fog that once protected their illusions is lifting, and even those who used to scoff are starting to feel the shift. You're not just being heard. You're being felt. The energy you've carried all this time, once dismissed as overreaction or imagination, now pulses through the collective with unmistakable clarity. What they denied is now undeniable. The strange glances, the dismissive tones, the quiet distancing, all those moments they labeled you as too much, too deep, or too suspicious, have turned to silence. But this time it's not rejection. It's recognition. They're retracing the timelines you already walked, realizing you weren't reacting, you were responding. Your instincts weren't broken. They were just early. The visions they once mocked are unfolding frame by frame. And every revelation validates the fact that you never needed permission to speak what you saw. You were always narrating truth. They just couldn't handle the subtitles yet. There's something powerful about being proven right without lifting a single finger to force it. That's what's happening now. The same ones who whispered against you are being confronted by echoes of their own words, but the echo bounces back in truth, not vengeance. No argument, no retaliation, no justification was ever needed. The script is playing out in its own time. And while they fumble to rewrite history, the collective is leaning in, tuning into a frequency you've been holding solo for far too long. The chorus is building around your once isolated melody. It's no longer just spiritual people that sense it. It's no longer just the intuitives that feel the shift. Even the most skeptical among them are starting to pause, replay, and rethink. The very logic they used to discredit you now traps them in their own contradictions. The house of mirrors they built around your name is cracking, and through those breaks, the light of what really happened is pouring in. You're not reclaiming anything. You never lost it. They're simply arriving at a truth you were always walking in. Some truths take time to ripple. What you spoke into silence is now echoing through every room that once tried to mute you. The threads are unraveling faster than they can be spun, and the weight of the evidence no longer needs translation. The clarity you walked in, once met with suspicion, now burns too bright to be denied. Those who watched from a distance are stepping forward, not out of guilt, but recognition. The silence that once isolated you has become a collective chorus saying, "We see it now." This is no longer your burden, it's the world's realization. Judgment doesn't always fall from the sky. Sometimes, it rises from the center of the people. This isn't about revenge or applause. It's about the world recalibrating itself around a center it once ignored. The energy you've carried has become a lens, and through that lens, the illusions fall apart. Their masks dissolve not by force but by friction with truth. The game they rigged is no longer playable, because the players now recognize the field was never even. Their control systems can't withstand the exposure, and no title, costume, or alignment will shield them from what's unfolding. The irony writes itself. Those who once stood on stage claiming superiority now fumble for meaning while replaying the very warnings they mocked. Their certainty is unraveling. Their audience is shrinking, and the timelines they disrupted for their own gain are returning, rearranged and corrected. The doors they slammed in your face are reopening elsewhere, and through them flow all the connections, resources, and moments they tried to block. Not out of pity, but because you were never disqualified, only delayed. And now the momentum is unstoppable. Chosen one. You've always known you were different. Not better, not above others, but set apart, marked by something invisible, protected by something unexplainable. And no matter how hard you tried to blend in, to play it safe, to walk the path others expected of you, something inside you refused to die. Do you remember the first time you realized you could see through people? Not their words, their energy. You noticed what wasn't said. You felt what they tried to hide. You carried truths in your body long before your mind could explain them. That's not random. That's spiritual intelligence. You were born into environments that tried to suppress you, not because you were weak, but because your light threatened the illusions that held everything together. You were the disruptor in systems of manipulation, the mirror that made others uncomfortable, and the enemy of every lie that fed off silence. They tried to shame you for seeing too much, tried to isolate you, call you too sensitive, too intense, too much. But chosen one, you were never too much. You were just too real for people addicted to their masks. And yes, it hurt. You tried to shrink yourself just to keep the peace. You played small in rooms you were destined to lead. You watered yourself down so others wouldn't feel insecure in your presence. But no more. Because now you understand. You weren't sent here to fit in. You were sent here to break cycles, to confront patterns generations before you were too afraid to face, to be the interruption in bloodlines of silence, denial, and fear. That's why your battles were harder. That's why the attacks were relentless. You were never being punished, you were being forged. Every betrayal was a classroom. Every loss was an initiation. Every lonely season was a sacred training ground. You've been stretched beyond reason, broken open more times than you can count. But each time, you rose. Not with bitterness, but with wisdom. Not with vengeance, but with clarity. Not with fear, but with fire. So let me ask you now, do you feel it? The shift in the atmosphere? The way things no longer affect you the same? That's because you've crossed over. You're not who you were 6 months ago, 6 weeks ago, even 6 days ago. Something woke up in you. And it's not going back to sleep. You've stopped looking for external validation. You've stopped explaining your purpose to people committed to misunderstanding it. You've stopped begging for a seat at tables you were meant to flip over. And now the real you walks in the room first. The unshaken, unbothered, fully aligned version of you. The one they tried to bury, not knowing you were a seed. Chosen one. You are the evidence that healing is possible. You are the proof that darkness never wins when the light refuses to bow. And you are about to step into a season where the very things that tried to destroy you will become your platform. Not because you seek revenge, but because you understand this. When God selects you in private, no public opinion can stop the assignment. When the universe anoints your path, no detour can cancel the destination. You didn't choose this path, it chose you. And the fact that you're still here, still breathing, still loving, still rising, is all the confirmation you need. Welcome back to yourself. The world hasn't seen anything yet.